After a moment of hesitation, I nodded. Tucking our boards back under our arms, we both hurried towards the road. Around the corner we spied the deviation a few hundred feet ahead of us. Holy shit, Aubrey breathed out. The intersection of Chestnut and Main Street looked like the aftermath of destruction nearby. Two cars had collided almost head-on with one another. What looked like late 80s or 90s built Lancet and a new brand of Acela, it's a type of car. With a sense of numbness surging through me, I realized I recognized both those vehicles. The Cadillac belonged to Mr. Zocco, and a rather wealthy but friendly man who rented out most of the houses he owned in town to the whisk tourists that came by every winter. The Buxleys belonged to Miss Carsley, the old woman who I stood behind in the grocery store yesterday. Smoke billowed out from both wrecks and shattered glass and twist the metal layers of the street around them for hundreds of feet. Oh my God, I said softly, echoing my friend's sentiment. We both exchanged a glance at each other. Then we began running towards the accident. As we ran, a small part of the back of my mind noticed something which was small, but permanent. I didn't see anyone else running out of their buildings. Everyone else in town had to heard it. Where were they? The train of thought was ripped away from me as we both scared to the stop at the sight of the driver's door of Cadillac being kicked open. An ear-piercing sound burst out from the SUV interior, and I dropped my board and clapped my hands over my ears. From the corner of my eye, I saw Aubrey do the same, squeaking her eyes shut in pain and stumbling back into the side of the brick building next to us. Even though my hands, I could still hear the sound. It sounded now slightly muffled for a second. I couldn't place it, and then it hit me. It was the loud honking siren of the emergency alert system. But it sounded wrong. It was as if the tones had been wrapped and distorted into something else, and by the sound of it, Mr. Zotz had been listening to his car radio at full volume when they had gone off. Speaking of which, a figure stumbled out of the SUV, grabbing onto the front door for support. Holy hell! In a handbasket, Mr. Zolks survived that, I thought. I squatted my gaze over to the book, squinting through the spider web of the crack that had become the windshield. I saw a small hint of movement. Then I saw Mrs. Coates lean back in her seat. She must have gashed her head open pretty badly because her forehead was covered in blood. Keeping my hands over my ears to dull the still shrieking tone, I turned and got as close to Aubrey as I could so she could hear me through her hands and over the noise. We've got to help them. At least try, I shouted as loud as I could. I could tell she understood me as she nodded after a second. Then she looked back towards the wreck, and A look flashed across her face, a look I can still remember perfectly. First confusion, then a clear expression of renewed horror. I felt a shiver shoot down my spine. I spun back around to look at what she had seen. I truthfully wish I hadn't. Mr. Zoltz was no longer in his car. Instead, he ran around to the driver's side of the truck. For a split second, I thought it was to help her, until the screaming began. I didn't realize an elder lady could scream so high and shrill. The busted windshield prevented me from seeing exactly what Mr. Zoltz was doing to Miss Cars, but it didn't prevent me from seeing the sudden fountain of blood which poured out from the coat inside the glass like pain. The sight shocked me so much that I took my hands away from my ears to clamp them over my mouth to keep from screaming. It was then that I noticed that the tone had stopped screeching. The silence had again settled down over the town, but only for a few seconds. Then the sounds had sprang up again, seemingly all over town, were almost somehow worse than the tone. They were the sounds of screaming. Yells and shrieks came from every conceivable direction. What I can only assume is what the depths of hell itself sounds like. It was as if everyone in town was being brutally murdered at the exact same time, almost as if it were a trigger. Mr. Zoltz snapped his head back from where he had been leaning into the car, and I saw that his eyes had gone completely red. It's as if the capsules in his eyes had burst. He reached back into the car and pulled out something. With a sickening itch of my stomach, I saw it was a sharp piece of broken glass. One edge dripping still fresh blood from it. Without even looking in our direction, he took off backwards, the heart of downtown in a spirit, almost in a manner of child rushing to join the frog-looking and fun of his friends in an amusement park. For a few moments, neither of us said anything. I mean, what were we supposed to say? We just simply stand there in dumbstruck horror, like deer in the headlights. Finally, Aubrey spoke up, her voice shaky. What the absolute fuck just happened? She managed out. I could only shake my head. The cries of terror that almost sounded like rage still coming out from the corner. She spoke again. He killed her. Miss Carts. He punctured her like a cow in a slaughterhouse. Eddie, what the fuck? Her voice rose into a scream as she finished. I tried to clamp a hand over her mouth, afraid her shriek would bring Mr. Zoltz back to us. I put a finger to my lips, and after a second she nodded, pulling my hand away. She spoke softer. Eddie, what the hell is happening? I shook my head, finally managing to find my voice. I I don't know.